Hi, it's my favorite time of day, the time of day when I get to read a good book to you. Today we're going to read No Star Nights by Anna Egan Smucker, and the paintings are by Steve Johnson. This is a book with some great illustrations in it, and it's interesting, especially if you live in Pennsylvania, maybe around Pittsburgh, places like that. I think that you will enjoy this story a lot. When I was little, we couldn't see the stars in the nighttime sky because the furnaces of the mill turned the darkness into a red glow. But we would lie on the hill and look up at the sky anyway and wait for a bright orange light that seemed to breathe in and out to spread across it. And we would know that the golden spark-spitting steel was being poured out of giant buckets into molds to cool. Then we would look down on a train pulling cars mounted with giant thimbles rocking back and forth. They were filled with fiery, hot, molten slag that in the night glowed orange, and when they were dumped, the sky lit up again. A loud steam whistle that echoed off the hills announced the change of shifts, and hundreds of men streamed out of the mill's gates. Everyone's dad worked in the mill and carried a tin lunchbox and a big metal thermos bottle. Work at the mill went on night and day. When Dad worked night shift, we children had to whisper and play quietly during the day so that we didn't wake him up. His job was too dangerous for him to go without sleep. He operated a crane that lifted heavy ingots of steel into a pit that was thousands of degrees hot. Do you see how the illustrator made the colors all muted and kind of smoky? And do you see the smoke coming out of the stacks back there? The illustrations lend a lot to the story. When Dad worked the 3 to 11 shift, Mom made dinner early so we could all eat together. She made the best stuffed cabbage of anyone in the neighborhood. We sometimes tried to help fold the cabbage leaves around the meat and rice like she did, but our cabbage leaves always came out unrolled. During the school year, days went by when we didn't see Dad at all because he was either at work or sleeping. When he changed shifts from daylight to night and back again, it took him a while to get used to the different waking and sleeping times. We called these his grumpy times. We liked it best when he had daylight hours to spend with us. We played baseball until it was too dark to see the ball. On a few very special summer afternoons, he would load us all into the car for a hot, sweaty trip to Pittsburgh and a doubleheader Pirates game at Forbes Field. We sat in the bleachers way out in left field eating popcorn and drinking lemonade that we brought from home, yelling our heads off for the Pirates. Our brother always wore his baseball glove, hoping to catch a foul ball that might come into the stands. Dad helped us mark our scorecards and brought us hot dogs during the 7th inning stretch. You ever been to a baseball game? On our way home, we passed the black silhouettes of Pittsburgh's steel mills with their great heavy clouds of smoke billowing from endless rows of smokestacks. The road wound along as the river wound, and between us and the river were the mills. And on the other side of the road were the hills, the river, the mills, and the hills. And we sang as we rode home, "She'll be comin' round the mountain when she comes." July was just about the best month of the year. Everyone who worked in the mill got their vacation pay then. We called it Christmas in July. All the stores had big sales. Even though it wasn't really Christmas, we each got a present. And the 4th of July parade was something everyone looked forward to. We were busy for weeks making flowers out of Kleenex to cover our Girl Scout float. Some of our friends took baton lessons and were part of a marching unit called the Steel Town Strutters. They wore shiny black and gold spangled leotards and threw their batons high up into the air and caught them. Something we sure couldn't do. But our favorites were the baby strutters. Some of them were only 2 years old. They did a good job just carrying their batons. With all the bands and fire engines and floats, the parade went on and on. There were convertibles with beauty queens sitting on the back. Members of the Kennel Club marched their dogs in circles and figure eights. Kids rode bikes decorated with colored crepe paper, flags, and balloons. The mayor drove an old-fashioned car and his children threw bubble gum and candies into the crowds. That looks like fun, doesn't it? Can you see these pictures and the colors they use? We went to school across from the mill. The smokestacks towered above us, and the smoke billowed out in great puffy clouds of red, orange, and yellow, but mostly the color of rust. Everything, houses, hedges, old cars, was a rusty red color. Everything but the little bits of graphite, and they glinted like silver in the dust. At recess, when the wind whirled these sharp, shiny metal pieces around, we girls would crouch so that our skirts touched the ground and kept our bare legs from being stung. We would squint our eyes when the wind blew to keep the graphite out. Once a piece got caught in my eye, and no matter how much I blinked or how much my eye watered, it wouldn't come out. When the eye doctor finally took it out and showed it to me, I was amazed that a speck that small could feel so big. We played on the steep street that ran up the hill beside our school. Our favorite game was dodgeball. The kids on the bottom row knew they had to catch the ball. If they didn't, it would roll down onto the busy county road that ran in front of the school. Too often, a truck carrying a heavy roll of steel would run over it, and with a loud bang, the ball would be flattened. The windows in our school were kept closed to try to keep the graphite and smoke out. On really windy days, we could hear the dry, dusty sound of grit hitting against the glass. Dusting the room was a daily job. The best duster got to dust the teacher's desk with a soft white cloth and a spray that made the whole room smell like lemons. It was always a mystery to us how the nuns who were our teachers could keep the white parts of their habits so clean. Some days it seemed as though there was a giant lid covering the valley, keeping the smoke in. It was so thick you couldn't see anything clearly. On days like that, I felt as if we were living in a whirling world of smoke. Would you like to live in a whirling world of smoke? The road we took home from school went right through part of the mill. Tall cement walls with strands of barbed wire at the top kept us on the sidewalk and out of the mill. But when we got to the bridge that spanned the railroad tracks, there was just a steel mesh fence. From there, we could look straight down into the mill. There was always something wonderful to watch. Through a huge open doorway, we could see the mammoth open hearth furnace. A giant ladle would tilt to give the fiery furnace a drink of orange molten iron. Sometimes we would see the golden liquid steel pouring out the bottom of the open hearth into enormous bucket-like ladles. The workers were just small dark figures made even smaller by the great size of the ladles in the furnace. The hot glow of the liquid steel made the dark mill light up, as if the sun itself was being poured out. And standing on the bridge, we could feel its awful heat. That's huge, isn't it? Warning sirens and the toots of steam whistles, the screeching sounds of train wheels, and the wham-wham of cars being coupled and uncoupled. All these sounds surrounded us as we stood on the bridge. From the other side, we could look into another part of the mill. Rows of lights hung from girders across the ceiling. White, hot steel bars glided smoothly over rollers on long tables. Men were using torches on the big slabs of steel. The torches gave off streaks of burning white light and showers of sparks that looked like our 4th of July sparklers. Can you imagine looking down into that and watching that? It would be interesting. Behind the mill rose huge piles of black shiny coal and rich red iron ore, and a hill of rusting scrap metal. A crane that to us looked like a dinosaur with huge jaws was constantly at work picking up twisted, jagged pieces of metal and dropping them into railroad cars to be taken into the mill. Sometimes we would imagine that the mill itself was a huge beast, glowing hot, breathing heavily, always hungry, always needing to be fed. And we would run home, not stopping once to look back over our shoulders. Not too far from our house was a hill made of boulders of slag from the mill. Our grandfather told us that long ago it had been a deep ravine. Over the years, truckload after truckload of slag from the mill had been dumped into it until the hole had become a hill. Now it towered over the old houses that were near it. For an adventure, my best friend and I once decided to climb the Slag Hill. We slipped and slid and sent the pitted rocks rolling down as we scrambled up. Our younger sisters spied us by now near the top and started climbing too. It was then that my friend and I saw the dump truck with a heavy load of slag from the mill slowly winding its way up the hill. Do you think that was a good decision to climb up there? "Don't dump, don't dump," we screamed, but the deep engine sounds of the truck, straining under its great load, drowned out our cries. Chunks of slag fell onto the roadway. The truck backed onto the flat place to dump its load. Stumbling toward it, we waved our arms and screamed again, "Don't dump! Please don't dump! Our sisters are down there!" The driver finally heard us, and leaning out the window of the cab, he saw the little girls. He nodded and waved his hand. Then the truck lurched forward back onto the road and disappeared around the curve. That could have been dangerous, right? We sank exhausted to the ground, our hearts pounding in our ears. The roar of the truck's engine became fainter and fainter. The sky around us was turning red and orange and gold. We looked down on the mill that seemed to go on forever into the valley. From its long, straight row of stacks, clouds of orange smoke swirled into the colors of the sunset. In the distance, a whistle blew. Many years have passed since then, and now the Slag Hill is covered with grasses and blackberry bushes and sumac trees. The night sky is clear and star-filled because the mill is shut down. The big buckets no longer pour the hot yellow steel. The furnaces whose fires lit up everything are rusting and cold. Not many children live in the town now. Most of the younger people have moved away to other places to find work. The valley's steelworking way of life is gone forever. But whenever the grandchildren come back to visit, they love more than anything else to listen to stories about the days when all the night long the sky glowed red. And that's the end. And some of you have probably heard of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and a lot of people don't know that they are named because it was a steel town, and there was a lot of steel work, just like what's going on in this book. That's why they named them that. All right, I hope you liked this. I'll see you next time. Bye, Peyton.